Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another one of my Dota 2 hero guides. Today we're going to be taking a look at the build for Huskar in patch 7.31b, and as always, before we jump into it, I just want to let you know that I usually suggest following the Tortellini and Immortal Faith in-game guides for pretty much every hero. If you feel like they're inaccurate for whatever reason, you can always go to Dota2ProTracker.com and look at all the high MMR and pro player pubs and see what they're building for every hero. So in this video, we're going to be looking at the carry and the mid version of Huskar, because I think in a lot of high MMR games, this hero is being played as a carry, but it's still viable as a mid. I play it as a mid. I think in most MMR brackets, you can play this hero as mid. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. It's pretty similar between the two roles. It's just kind of slight variations, which I'll mention and talk about. So let's just jump into the skill build here. So in this skill build, you can see that Inner Fire is leveled, the first level. And this is actually the most popular first skill for this hero. If you look at Dota 2 Pro Tracker, this is the most popular build for safe lane and for mid. The unique part about this hero, though, is that actually all three of his abilities are viable to be skilled level 1, which is pretty interesting. But Inner Fire is the most popular one, and that's largely because it's kind of like a multifaceted ability, has a lot of different uses. It's good for a little bit of harass damage. It also can secure you CS because it does a little bit of damage to the creeps as well. And it also allows you to trade better too. So if you're against something like a Tiny or any kind of hero with very high right-click damage, having this is very good for securing CS, not only for the damage, but also with the disarm. You can then, secure those CS once you disarm them. You can also trade a little bit better with this as well. So it's just a great all-around kind of middle-of-the-road ability. The next two abilities kind of tell you what you're going to be doing in this lane and how aggressive you can be, or whether you need to be passive. And that's pretty much straightforward and simple with this skill build and how you want to be thinking about it. So if you're going to be getting Burning Spear level 1, it's because you're going to be ultra aggressive, and you're pretty much never going to be getting Burning Spear level 1 in the safe lane, but you can get in the mid lane. This is because in the mid lane, sometimes you'll have matchups against melee heroes or heroes that really don't threaten you level 1. They're not going to be doing a lot of harass. You can get on top of them, and it's okay to use some of your health to harass them a bunch with this level 1 spear, and that can be okay, and sometimes you're going to take that. And this pretty much just tells me you think you can be ultra aggressive. It's very matchup dependent. And then there's also Berserker's Blood level 1, which is a little bit more popular in the safe lane, which says that I need to be very passive. I'm not going to be able to approach the wave. I'm against a ton of harass. It's very hard for me to even walk up and use Inner Fire. So I'm going to need Berserker's Blood to just maintain, stay in the lane, secure some CS, even get a little bit more attack speed in there to try to, secure CS. It's not about damage. It's just about surviving to get my CS. And that's Berserker's Blood. And then from there into the laning stage, the same principles pretty much apply. If you didn't get Inner Fire level 1, that's okay. Then you may just skip this altogether until later on. It just depends, when you think you need it. But otherwise, you're going to be putting points into Burning Spear or Berserker's Blood, kind of depending on the same thing that we talked about before, whether you can be aggressive or whether you need to be passive. If you think you can be super aggressive and you can harass the enemy and you aren't really in threat to die at all, you can put more points in Burning Spear. So we can see here he has 1 point in Berserker's Blood at level 2, and then 2 points in Spear right in a row. So at level 4, he's 1, 2, 1. That's okay if you think you can be pretty aggressive, but sometimes you need to be a little bit more passive. So sometimes it actually can be okay to be to have the skill build of 1, 1, 2, because you just need that regen, you need that attack speed. You don't want to be using Burning Spear a ton, because if you put yourself too low, you're going to die. So that's the real consideration. If you didn't get Inner Fire level 1, you can max both of these out before you even get Inner Fire and get this at like level 10. It just depends on matchups again, whether you think that disarm is really good. And then the last thing to talk about is Life Break. So Life Break at level 6, obviously most people get their ultimate at level 6, but this hero is kind of unique in the sense that you also don't want to be really skilling Life Break if you're not going to get aggressive, because it's just one of these abilities that, you don't want to put yourself in a vulnerable position. You don't want to jump out of position on top of the hero if you feel like you're going to get turned on, you're going to get killed very easily, all these kinds of things. It's just not great in that sense. The other thing to consider is that you don't want to be getting this before you have your armlet, because until you have your armlet, which you're going to rush pretty much every game from mid and safe lane, it's just not really worth using this, where once you have armlet, you can actually have armlet toggled off, you can use your Life Break, and then you can toggle your armlet on right after you use this life break, and then it'll pretty much just like not really cost you much HP, and it'll just be really effective in that way. So that's the other thing to consider too. So you can delay inner fire, you can delay life break until you really need them, until you need to be aggressive, or until you need that disarm later, or that kind of like mini stun sort of pushback. So keep that in mind. And then whether you max out Burning Spear or Berserker's Blood first is really just all considered, whether you need to be passive or aggressive like I talked about. And ideally, sometimes you can even hit level 6 and have 3 points in each of these. It's really not a problem. You could even, be level 8 and have 4 and 4. That's totally a viable build with this hero. So that's the that's the skill build. Pretty straightforward in the sense that, like, this is the middle all around ability. This is aggressive ability. This is a passive ability. But, just depending on the matchups, you're going to be leveling very differently with this hero, just depending on those matchups and how you feel the matchup is going, which is why playing Huskar is one of those things. You need some experience. You need to understand what threatens you and when you die. So then we're going to look at the talent tree for leveling up. I will say that one interesting thing about this hero is a lot of people skip the talent at level 10 because it's just not that worth it. It's better to get another ability here because his abilities are just so valuable. So a lot of people actually skip the level 10 talent. Even here you see he doesn't get it till 15. And at 15, they actually get the level 15 talent. So regardless of when you get them, you're pretty much going to be going for the inner fire duration, I would say. That's almost always better, just because that extra disarm is so good in so many different matchups. You're always going to be going against some kind of hero that does right-click damage, and that pushback and that disarm is just so much better. The life break slow, just not as important. The Burning Spear DPS, you're going to go that almost every time. Lifesteal is okay, but if you really need lifesteal, you can buy Satanic later on. You don't really need that lifesteal in this build with this hero. I mean, it is viable. It's definitely not the worst, but Burning Spear DPS is way better just because you want to output way more damage. And we'll see at the 25 talent, that increases your damage even more when you can get that Burning Spear pure damage at 25, which you'll pretty much get every time. And then level 20, we can see the Berserker's Blood regen is just way better. You don't need this life break cooldown. It's already such a low cooldown that -3 seconds doesn't really do much. I mean, it can be good when you're going to go Ags, that's fine, but I think it's just already such a low cooldown, you don't really need it. And that extra regen just makes you even more unkillable, just makes you scale even better into the later portion of the game where you can be so hard to kill later. This hero used to be like a snowball, stomp the lane, stomp the game, but fall off later. Really, with the talents and the way this hero works now, that is not the case. This hero can actually be just an insane threat later onto the game. And that level 20 talent is partially one of the reasons, because that 30% increase in the regen is pretty significant. And then level 25, like I said, you're going to get that pure damage. It's just so good. To do pure damage is always going to be very valuable. And again, the life break talent is just not that great. It's honestly not very good. So you're going to skip all the life break talents. The only real, consideration of which one you could go is you could go for the lifesteal instead of the Burning Spears at 15, but you're pretty much going to go for the Burning Spear DPS. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple there with the talent tree. The only real thing is that you might want to skip that level 10 talent till later in the game, till even level 16, like we can kind of see here. So that is the skill build there for Huskar, for safe lane and for mid. Now let's move on to the item build here. And actually here it says for both of these item builds, it says you can start off with a bracer. I actually like to start off with 3 gauntlets of strength. So the gauntlets of strength are what build into the bracer. They just give you a little bit more damage, and I don't think you actually want to finish the bracer. So I usually start off with a tango, 3 gauntlets of strength, and a fairy fire in the mid lane. And I think you could even do kind of a similar kind of thing in the safe lane as well. And then you're going to go straight into rushing the Helm of the Iron Will, because this is just a great all-around item for this hero. It gives you more HP regen and armor against harass, these kinds of things. It's just great. And then you're going to rush Armlet straight up way before boots, because this Armlet timing is just so important. You can get this pretty early, and then you're like unkillable. You do so much more damage. It's just a great all-around item. And the earlier you get it, the better. Then you're going to get brown boots. You can get treads. That is an option, but usually I just keep this as brown boots and just let you, it's just kind of a waste to put that extra 1,000 gold into treads, because you don't really need it. You already have a ton of attack speed, and sometimes I know it's kind of, it's not really the way this hero is thought of in general, but extra attack speed isn't always the best, because you actually can kill yourself early on in that kind of mid portion of the game before you have a lot more regen, a lot more tankiness, more HP, these kinds of things. Actually attacking faster can sometimes just mean that you actually die, because you're using your Burning Spears a bunch a lot quicker. Obviously, you can toggle them on and off. You can choose not to use them, those kinds of things. But just keep that in mind as well. Then from here, we're going to change up the build a little bit and just determine what we need. Usually I will go for a Sange, whatever build you're really going. The casual Sange is almost always good. It's almost always like pretty good just with that extra amp and the status resistance. It's almost always viable. The only reason I wouldn't go this casual Sange right here is because I desperately need BKB. Like, you just have to get BKB or you're going to die. It's just one of these games where the ultimates, the things that threaten you, are just so bad that you actually can't even go in without BKB. And then I'm just rushing straight for BKB after my armlet and my treads, and that's definitely viable. But otherwise, if I'm not super threatened, if I'm having a good game, I will go the Sange, and then after the Sange, I will say, okay, do I need to go BKB now? Is this desperate that I need a BKB, or can I actually finish Heaven's Halberd before I even need to go BKB? And this would be against like Ursa's, other heroes that do a lot of right-click damage, Lifestealer, other heroes that like you desperately need. You can, basically get away with the evasion and the disarm, and that'll be enough to help you survive, and the disable and the ultimates aren't really a problem. Then either way, whether I finished Heaven's Halberd or not, I'm going into BKB every single time, and then next we're going Ags. And this is pretty much the item build every time. Even if I go BKB and then Ags, I will even maybe go back for this Heaven's Halberd just because this Sange is just so good overall. I almost never go SNY. I will occasionally, but there's almost every game Heaven's Halberd is going to be good. That extra evasion and the disarm and all that kind of stuff, it's just almost always good because you're always going to be against a right clicker. So it's just something to almost always consider. But either way, this is going to be the build every time. The Ags is really what makes this hero insanely powerful. So once you get this Ags timing, obviously the timing of everything here is going to be good, but BKB is a great timing, and then Ags is an even greater timing. Like, this timing is so insane because it's a crazy disable. You can disable pretty much anybody and kill them like full to zero. It's so hard for people to play into this Agnum Scepter. It's just ridiculous when you can get this timing early. So that's the build pretty much every time. And then from there, you can kind of switch it up. What do you really need? What do you feel like is the problem that you're needing to deal with? Do you need more mobility? You can go for a blink and overwhelming blink. Do you need to like TP around the map more because you're getting, split pushed? You can go for that Boots of Travel. You can go for Satanic if you feel like you just need to lifesteal out of stuff. Like, they can threaten you maybe with one round of spells, but then if you just Satanic out of it with your BKB, then they're screwed. They're not going to be able to kill you a second time. Do you just want some extra damage, extra armor, extra tankiness with these kinds of right clicks and these kinds of things like the evasion and the disarm from inner fire isn't enough, so you need that armor and you just want that attack speed? You can go that. Do you want a nullifier for Dispel? This is something I wouldn't really go too often, but Nullifier for Dispel is definitely an option if like they just have a ton of stuff like Pugna, Necro, these kinds of things that this is good against. Ag Shard also, if you just have a little bit of gold, you want to save for buyback, but there's not enough to get to the next item, and you can use this. It's just a good all-around shard. You usually get this from Roche though, so I wouldn't necessarily always buy it because sometimes I'll get this from Roche. And then the other thing to consider that's not actually on this list is, let's see if it's on Immortal Fates here. No, it's not. Is Heart. You can actually go Heart of Tarrasque, and it's ridiculous on this hero. The amount of HP, regen, strength, these kinds of things, it just makes you even more unkillable. I really wouldn't go Blade Mail. I wouldn't go Mage Slayer, Eternal Shroud. Sometimes I go SNY, but not very often. But I wouldn't really go these items. Heart would be one that is a situational item as well. So yeah, this build pretty much every game, just the Sange and the Heaven's Halberd are the consideration, and then you can go into these luxury items afterwards. But honestly, if you get all of these items, if you get BKB, Ags, Armlet, with your boots and like a Heaven's Halberd, if you complete all these items and you get to that point in the game and it's not over, you can just stomp the game. Like, you'll win. This hero is so good right now because of that. So that is the build for Huskar for patch 7.31b. And as always, guys, if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. Join the Discord if you haven't already. We do replay reviews every Friday and community days every Saturday on my Twitch, and you can get involved in that through the Discord. And as always, I have my Patreon available. If you want to see more content like this in the future, consider going there and donating and helping me sustain this kind of content. And also, there's coaching available there too if you want that as well. So as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.